I noticed him right away. He wasn't a gray-haired con man in an Armani suit like Swaggart or Falwell. He was a hipster with a mohawk, a goatee, a fake tan, Dockers pants, a Hawaiian shirt, a linen jacket, and topsiders without socks. But he was still a female pastor. My wife and I were standing in line to shake the new preacher's hand as we left the church. The line moved slowly toward the exit, and God's chosen one stood with his blonde wife, greeting new parishioners. I noticed how he shook hands with the men in the usual manner, simply looking for the next hand. But when it came to the women, oh my, his face lit up and his enthusiasm doubled. I eagerly awaited his reaction to my wife, Ellie, who is truly a gift from God to men. I was not disappointed. When she approached and extended her hand, I thought he was going to faint. His eyes widened, a smile lit up his face, and even his tanned skin turned red. Hypocritical is a weak word to describe his brief conversation with Ellie, which he desperately tried to prolong by holding her hand and nodding formally to me. Finally, I managed to extricate us from the embrace of Pastor Rick and his wife, Christy, who solemnly declared that they were looking forward to working with us in the fields, ready for harvest. Alarm bells rang in my head. Turbulent times lay ahead. I wasn't surprised by his reaction to my wife. She is, without a doubt, the most beautiful woman in the world. And that's not just my opinion. Everyone who sees her agrees. Every man with a beautiful wife knows how men look at her when she walks into a room. Ellie attracts the attention of both men and women, and it's more of an aesthetic perception than a sexual one. She's extraordinarily beautiful, tall, with long legs, long brown hair, sparkling green eyes, porcelain skin, a slim waist, and a curvy figure. If you remember the old actresses, she's very similar to Maureen O'Hara. And me? I'm incredibly average. Average height, average weight, average looks. There's nothing remarkable or impressive about me. I'm somewhere between Clark Kent and Peter Parker, but without the superhero tendencies. And I'm an accountant. You may ask, what did she see in me? I ask myself the same question every morning when I wake up next to her. We met at church, dated for 6 months, got engaged, and were married 3 months later. In those 9 months, I fell in love with Ellie more than I love life itself. You see, her looks were just the tip of the iceberg. I discovered that my wife was even more beautiful on the inside. She was raised by very devout parents who believed in a loving, merciful God. So Ellie grew up to be the most welcoming, tolerant, and open person I have ever met. She was homeschooled her entire life, so she was the most innocent, naive, and trusting person I knew. And I never wanted that to change. I wanted her to always believe in goodness and light, and I would protect her from evil and darkness. So, how did you like the new pastor? I asked on the way home. I thought he was great. I really liked the sermon. It was very positive and uplifting, and I liked it when he called all the kids forward for the children's sermon. And when we met him and his wife at the door, I thought they were both very nice. But they're much younger than all the pastors we've had before, so maybe it'll take some getting used to. What do you think? Not bad. The sermon was okay, a little light on Bible quotes, but he's a good speaker. He sounds more like a coach than a preacher, though. But I'll get used to it. Just like I got used to modern worship. 7-Eleven style music, 7 words repeated 11 times. She rolled her eyes and sighed, and we held hands all the way home. It wasn't long before the snake showed its ugly mouth. 2 days later, on Tuesday afternoon, my home security system sent an alert to my work computer. I opened the remote camera viewing app and saw a strange black Toyota SUV pull up to my house. I watched as Pastor Rick walked around the car, opened the passenger door, and escorted my wife to the front door. Taking her by the arms, he hugged her, then turned and walked back to his car. He paused to wave goodbye, then drove away. I turned off my computer, turned off the lights, and closed the office door behind me. I drove home. The game was on. When I arrived, I knew I needed to find out how Ellie's day had gone. She didn't know about the security system, and I wanted her to stay that way for now. You're back early. I'm glad. Now you can take me to church to get my car. It wouldn't start when I left work, but Pastor Rick kindly offered to give me a ride home. He was on his way to visit some elderly people in our neighborhood, so he gave me a lift. I think it's just the battery. When I pressed the button, there was a click. Okay, honey, I'm sorry you're having car trouble. You should have replaced the battery when it happened last time. I'll take the Fiat Max and we'll go get it. And don't worry about dinner. I'll pick up some pizza on the way. As expected, the jump start worked and I drove straight to Advance Auto to replace the battery. Then I stopped at Little Caesars for a hot pizza. While we ate, Ellie talked non-stop about how nice Pastor Rick was to give her a ride home. I nodded and grunted, but said nothing to dampen her gratitude. But I silently berated myself for forgetting that Ellie, the assistant children's pastor at the church, regularly interacted with a female pastor who was a hunter. Yes, Ellie, though naive, innocent, and trusting, was no fool. She had attended college, majoring in Christian studies at Ouachita Baptist University in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. After graduating, she began working at a church in the Valley in Huntsville, Alabama. I earned an accounting degree from the University of Alabama, and after 4 years of service in the Army through the ROTC program, I began working for a government agency in Huntsville. While searching for a place to pray, I found myself at Valley Church where I met Allison. She became a valued member of the church family. She loved her job, loved the children at the church, and dreamed of having children of her own. She was 24, and I was 28. After 3 years of marriage, we were on our way to becoming parents, but a snake got in the way. I became more interested in Ellie's work. I started asking her questions about her job every day, listening for any mention of Pastor Rick or his wife. For several weeks, I stopped by the church to check on Ellie or invite her to lunch, never once encountering the pastor. With the help of an IT guru colleague, I hacked into the church's security system so I could remotely view the camera footage at any time. Due to numerous scandals involving child abuse, the church had cameras in every room where children could be present, including Ellie's office. I didn't like the idea of invading her privacy, but I was in protection mode. It wasn't long before the snake came out of its hole. With Easter approaching, the entire church was preparing for its annual Living Cross program, a reenactment of the Easter story involving over 100 choir members and actors. Since there were many children in the cast, Ellie was assigned as assistant director. This meant she would be working closely with the pastor, who was directing the play. I was sure his idea of working closely was not the same as mine. I attended the first few rehearsals in person, but felt uncomfortable. Not wanting to arouse suspicion, I decided to watch the hours-long rehearsals through the church's security cameras. After a week, the only thing I noticed was that the pastor was very affectionate with my wife. He behaved this way with all the women, but with Ellie it was twice as bad. If he was near her, if he was talking to her, he would always touch her, stroking her hand, putting his arm around her shoulders, squeezing her hand. Once, he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Another time, he removed a thread or a lint ball from her sweater above her chest. When I saw that, my blood pressure shot up about 3 times. He also started coming into her office every day to cheer her up. Allison, however, didn't notice any of this. She innocently ignored it. She couldn't imagine any malicious intent on the part of her pastor. I could, and I decided to do something about it. As Palm Sunday approached, Ellie and the company were completely absorbed in rehearsals, and stress levels rose sharply. Ellie came home completely exhausted and hardly slept. "Honey, I know the performance is coming up, but if you don't slow down and get some rest, you're going to collapse." "There are only 3 days left after tonight's dress rehearsal, Matt. Yes, I'm tired, but I can see the end and I have to see it through. I can't break down before Monday." I shut myself in my home office and settled in front of the monitors so I wouldn't miss a minute of the dress rehearsal. The first hour passed without incident, and I was amazed at how well my wife was herding her cats and getting such a performance out of the children. However, in the middle of the crucifixion scene, one of the crosses sprang loose and struck one of the 12-year-old boys on the head. Unfortunately for the production, he was playing the lead child role, the boy to whom the pastor was telling the story. I saw Ellie tear apart, first out of concern for the boy, Jonathan, who had suffered a concussion and needed stitches, and then out of concern for the production, which had now lost its main character. Crying loudly, she ran to her office. Pastor Rick jumped up and followed her. Glancing at her office, I watched their conversation closely. As she sat sobbing on the edge of the desk, Pastor Rick, or Prick, as I was supposed to call him, walked over to her and began stroking her hands. Feeling overwhelmed and seeking comfort, Ellie collapsed into his arms and buried her face in his chest. He liked that. I know because I watched him. He buried his nose in her hair and kissed her on the top of her head several times, soothing her. When she calmed down, she pulled away from him, and he leaned down and kissed her lightly on the lips. Her eyes widened, and she covered her mouth with her hand, but said nothing. "Don't worry. We'll figure something out. Now let's go back and sort this out," he said. And so they did. They enlisted the help of Jonathan's 10-year-old sister, who learned her part by listening to her brother rehearse, proving that she was smarter than him and every other boy in the world. The play went off without a hitch, much to the delight of the congregation and the entire community. Naturally, Pastor Rick was pleased with the success and his role in it. He decided to reward the other directors and leaders by inviting them to lunch on Tuesday after Easter. Ellie was thrilled. The recent disaster had lifted her from the depths of despair to the heights of happiness. She said she couldn't remember the last time she had felt so alive. I noticed that. "You're obviously on cloud nine, lady." "Yes, Matt. I'm so glad the play went well, and I hope it was a blessing to everyone who saw it." "Well, your directing was clearly top-notch because the kids were magnificent. They were truly the best part of the show." "Thank you, dear. But I couldn't have done it without Pastor Rick, without his support. And if he hadn't solved the problem with Jonathan, I don't know what we would have done." "That's true, Ellie, but don't sell yourself short. You played a big part in the success of the play. I have to get to the office. Are you coming?" "Yes, but a little later. I'm going to buy a new dress first. Pastor Rick invited us all to lunch to celebrate the success of the play, and I don't have anything to wear." "Okay, you deserve a nice dinner and a new dress. Have a good time. By the way, where are you going?" "I'm pretty sure we're going to a new steakhouse called Brown's." "Oh, that sounds nice. Enjoy your dinner." I got in my car and drove to work. On the way, I thought about how I could follow them to the restaurant. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a ploy and only Prick and Ellie went to dinner and then he took her to a motel. But just in case, I needed spies at the restaurant. I found them in Alex and Maddie, two co-workers who were happy to have lunch at an expensive steakhouse in exchange for a little spy work. Ellie didn't know them, so there was no danger. I gave them photos of Ellie and Prick so they could recognize their targets. My agents didn't return from lunch until 2 hours later. Alex began his report on the work he had done. "Man, that guy is such a chatterbox. I thought he would never shut up. And so smug. You know, we have a video on our iPhone if you want to see it, and we borrowed one of those new directional microphones from the operations department, so we have an audio recording if you want to listen to it." "Is there anything worth seeing or hearing?" I asked. Maddie joined the conversation. "Nothing earth-shattering or mind-blowing, no compromising evidence or anything like that, but this guy is definitely interested in your wife, and he likes her. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's nothing going on between them yet, but he can't keep his hands off her. He made sure she was sitting next to him and seemed to be trying to stroke her leg under the table. She was hanging on his every word. That's all in terms of physical contact, right, Alex?" Alex: "Yes, that's exactly right. You only need to watch a minute or two of the video to see it. But the sound is a little different. Towards the end of dinner, the preacher tried to get your wife alone to talk to her privately. We overheard part of the conversation with the new microphone and recorded it on my phone. Let's listen. With that, he took his phone, launched the voice recorder app, and selected the file. The pastor's voice came through loud and clear. Ellie, the play was good, but I can't help thinking that we could improve it next year. Think about how we could edit or add to some of the scenes to make them more dramatic. Do you know what I mean? Ellie replied, Of course, I agree with you. I know we need to include understudies in the cast. If we had done that this year, we wouldn't have had any problems with Jonathan. You're absolutely right. Fortunately, with God's help, everything worked out. But don't you think we should get together while it's still fresh in our minds to discuss these things and think about them a little? Great idea. When and where would you like to meet? You decide. You have a lot more to do than I do. Okay, let me invite you to lunch on Thursday, and then we can go to your place to talk. If we meet at the church, we'll be interrupted all the time and won't get anything done. Let's take separate cars so you don't have to go back to the church. Okay, Pastor Rick, Thursday at 11:30. Where? Why don't we try that new Italian restaurant on that street? Great, I love Italian food. Alex turned off the player and leaned back in his chair. I'm not going to show you, but if you watch the video where Reverend Boy is setting everything up, he has this smirk on his face that's just unbearable. He wants to get Ellie, and I think Thursday is the day. Maybe it's time, boss. Thanks, Alex, Maddie. You're good friends. Now give me back my credit card and check and get out of here. I'll take care of it myself. I went down the back stairs to the second floor to the SCIF, the room where classified information was stored. I put my face to the scanner and opened the door. I sat down at the conference table and picked up the red phone. I dialed the necessary identification numbers and then simply said, Requesting clearance. 3 minutes later, the same phone rang. I described the situation, provided the requested information, hung up, and went home. When I got home, Ellie was still on cloud 9. How was lunch? I asked her. Wonderful. Great restaurant. We should go there sometime, but only on a special occasion. It's very expensive. Anything else? Who was there? Just you and the pastor? No, of course not. It was me, the other co-director, Myra, Bill McKinney, the choir director, Jolynn Reed, who did the costumes, you know, and Barry Vines, who built the sets, and the pastor. That's all. Are you all going back next year to do the same thing? Oh, I don't know. Bill and I are employees, so we have to do what we're told. But I don't know about Myra, Jolynn, or Barry. They're all volunteers. Whatever happens, I'm sure you'll all figure it out, just like you did this year. Oh, is that a new dress? It looks great on you. Did the pastor like it? Ellie blushed. He said he did. Others have complimented me on it too. It was nice, but your opinion is the only one that matters to me. Honey, I love it on you. I would love you without it. I winked at her, and she blushed again. The next day, I gathered Alex and Maddie again and arranged to meet them on Thursday at an Italian restaurant. This time, they brought a microphone and transmitter, and I got in the car with a receiver and a voice recorder. Why did I need to listen to this? I wanted to confirm this guy's evil intentions. At 11:25, my agents and I took our seats. Alex and Maddie entered the restaurant, but before sitting down, Alex excused himself and went to the restroom, leaving Maddie to wait. We established communication between ourselves and made sure the microphone was transmitting to my devices. Alex returned to Maddie just as Ellie and the pastor were sitting down at their table. Maddie looked at them and asked for a table on the same side so she could see Ellie clearly. I could hear their conversation clearly through my headphones. They started with typical lunch conversation between colleagues about events at the church, the stresses of dealing with parishioners for him and parents for her, and the usual small talk with the waiter. Meanwhile, Alex or Maddie kept me informed of what was happening. Alex whispered in my ear, "The waiter just cleared the salad bowls, and the pastor took her hand across the table and is now slowly stroking it." Ellie isn't reacting. She's still looking at him and listening intently. Then the conversation got interesting. Ellie, I have to say that the best thing about coming to the valley is meeting you. You truly have the heart of a servant. I've never met anyone more dedicated to the Lord's work. It's been a real pleasure getting to know you. Thank you, Pastor Rick, that's so sweet. But I think some of the credit belongs to you. I'm very inspired by your leadership and support. In just a few months, you've turned our church into a house on fire for God. I'm so glad we found you and Christy. We're glad you found us. At least I am. Christy, God bless her, has been through some tough times over the last few years. You have no idea how hard it is to be a pastor's wife or a pastor's kid like me. Everyone expects you to be perfect. It's like living under constant scrutiny. Christy has struggled with depression because of that, and because we found out she can't have children. Oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry. Maybe she should see a counselor. Ellie, please don't tell anyone, but she's already seeing a counselor. So far, without much success, but we're hopeful. Pastor, how are you coping with all this? I know you're worried about Christy, but it must be hard to stand in front of your congregation every Sunday and pretend that everything is fine. What do you do for yourself? I've heard about support groups for clergy and even Christian psychotherapists who specialize in pastors' problems. Have you tried that? No, not yet. Ellie, I just feel overwhelmed. Moving to a new city, starting a new church, problems with Christy. All these years I've been used to her support, and now she's gone. I've worn out my knees praying to God for help, but it seems like he's disappeared too. I'm starting to lose hope, and maybe even a little faith. At that moment, Maddie's voice rang out. My God, that jerk is still holding her hand, and now he's crying. Ellie continued. Oh no, Pastor. God hasn't abandoned you. He's not done with you yet. These are just temporary difficulties. You will overcome them. I will support you. The whole church will support you. With God's help, we'll get through this. Thank you, Ellie. But I feel like such a fraud, a phony, standing here giving advice and encouragement on behalf of God, talking about joy and prosperity when in reality, I'm just depressed and poor in spirit. And there's no hope for relief. Well, you need to let us hug you. And you need professional help. I'm sure you pastors have a network you can discreetly use to find a therapist or counselor. What's the point? I've lost my companion. Christy is breathing, but spiritually and emotionally she's dead. I shouldn't tell you this. Oh, how ashamed I am. But we haven't been close since we found out about Christy's infertility, almost 3 years ago. She lost all interest in sex. I love her very much. In sickness and in health, you know. But we're only married on paper. Maddie joined the conversation again. Oh my God, that's the cold wife trick. Oh, you poor man. I had no idea. At that moment, the food was served, and the conversation was interrupted for a minute or two. Then Prick spoke again. Ellie, I hope you won't tell anyone about this, not even your husband. Churchgoers can be so judgmental, and I don't want to lose the respect of the congregation if they think I can't satisfy my wife. Thank you for trusting me enough to share this. I wouldn't dare betray your trust. I could hear the emotion in Ellie's voice. Maddie said, she took his hand, and I can see tears running down her cheeks. Then Prick sealed his fate. Ellie, you are a gift from God. I think it was his will that brought me to the valley to meet you. I am amazed at how well we work together, and I think it's good for both of us. Sometimes God sends special people into our lives to pave the way for us and light the way. There are no accidents in God's plan. Everything happens for a reason. I think he brought you into my life to be that special friend who will help me heal and lead me out of my spiritual desert so that I can continue to serve the Lord. Maddie spoke again. He lifted her hand and kissed it. She's still crying. Now Ellie spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. Oh, Pastor Rick, I would be honored to be that friend. It hurts me so much to see you in such despair. I will do everything in my power to help you find joy and faith. Thank you, Ellie. Oh, look at the time. We haven't even talked about the production yet, but we can discuss that at your place. I heard them pay and leave the restaurant. I was parked in the back of the lot in the agency car, so they couldn't see me. I watched them get into their cars and drive away toward my house. Alex and Maddie got out and got into my car. "Well, what do you think?" I asked. Maddie replied, "The combination of God's will and a cold wife always works. He has modest hunting skills, but with an innocent girl like Ellie, she was easy prey. Boss, he has evil intentions." I looked at Alex. He just nodded. I took my phone and sent a short message, then turned to Alex and Maddie and held out my hand, palm up. "Okay, give me my card and get out of here. Thanks again for your help. See you in the office in the morning." They drove away. I pulled out of the parking lot and headed home. I parked in the alley behind our house and entered through the back door. Ellie and her boss were just coming in through the front door. The preacher turned pale and began to sweat. Ellie looked pleasantly surprised. "Matt, what are you doing home? You're never home this early. Is something wrong?" "No, everything's fine. I just forgot my briefcase. What are you doing here with the pastor?" I said this with a slight smile so they would know I was joking. Before Ellie could answer, Prick interjected, "Oh, Ellie and I decided to get together and strategize for next year, while this year's problems and failures are still fresh in our minds. If I try to do something like this at church, I get interrupted all the time. It's just not productive. So she kindly offered to let us do it here." I nodded seriously. "I think that's a good idea. Come on in. I'll get us all something to drink. We still have a pitcher of iced tea. I'll have a glass with you, and then I need to get back to the office." Ellie and the pastor settled into the living room, and I went to the kitchen to make drinks. When I returned, Ellie had laid out notebooks and pens on the coffee table. I handed them their glasses and sat down in one of the armchairs, while Ellie and Prick sat at opposite ends of the sofa. After 5 minutes of light conversation, Ellie began rubbing her nose and eyes. "I don't know what's wrong with me, but I'm terribly sleepy and can't keep my eyes open." "Darling, what's the matter? Are you ill? Did you have lunch? You didn't drink wine with your lunch, did you? You know wine makes you sleepy." "Yes, I had lunch. No, I didn't drink any wine. I must have caught a cold. Oh, Pastor Rick, I'm so sorry, but I have to postpone our talk. I feel terrible." Pastor Rick, looking quite upset, tried to comfort Ellie. "Don't worry, Allison. We have a whole year for that conversation. Just try to feel better." I jumped up. "Excuse me, Pastor. I'll take Ellie upstairs so she can rest. Please finish your tea. I still need to talk to you." I helped Ellie up the stairs to our bed, tucked her in, took off her shoes, and laid her down. By this time, she was almost asleep. I kissed her forehead and went back downstairs. "Pastor, it's a good idea to start preparing for next year's show. Can I offer you something stronger? I don't know how you feel about alcohol, but I have some good single malt whiskey. There's also beer, wine, or soda. What would you prefer?" "Well, I think a little wine is good for the stomach, so I'll have a glass if I may." "I'll get it right away." I poured him a glass of Chardonnay and myself a glass of Lafroig. I handed him his drink and said, "Come into the study. It's more comfortable there." I sat down in an armchair and pointed to the chair opposite me. We both took a sip, and he began, "What's on your mind, Matt? If you confide in me, I promise that everything will remain between us. I consider myself a confidant to all my parishioners. What would you like to talk about?" "My wife, Pastor. My wife. You see, I've been watching you since the day we met. You want my wife, don't you?" "I don't know what you're talking about. Sure, your wife is attractive, she's even beautiful. But so is mine, and I'm a faithful husband. I haven't slept with your wife." "Oh, I know. But you laid the groundwork. In fact, that's the real reason you're here today, isn't it? You were going to sleep with my wife this afternoon, weren't you? Come on, admit it. You've been planning this for 3 months. The touching, The ride home, the hugs, the kiss on the day of the dress rehearsal. Yes, I saw it all. Well played, by the way. But that's just part of the seduction, isn't it? And the blatantly metaphysical things you said to her at lunch today about how God brought you together, used you to help her through a crisis, how he can use her to satisfy your sexual desires. And I saw the surprise and disappointment on your face when you saw me here today. Yes, you were clearly going to sleep with my wife this afternoon, in her marriage bed. No, that's ridiculous. I never said anything like that to her. Where did you get all this? Pastor, I've been watching you since day one. I took out my phone and played the audio recording of Tuesday's lunch. After a few seconds, I switched to today's conversation. His eyes were huge, and beads of sweat appeared on his receding hairline. You know, you people in cassocks shouldn't lie to your parishioners. But you've lied a lot, haven't you, Pastor Rick? My wife isn't the first object of your pastoral desires, is she? I pulled a folder out of the coffee table next to the chair. Here's the complete file on your previous pastoral positions. It looks like you've sown the seeds in several parishes across the country and have been expelled from at least 2 of them. In one of them, you left the organist pregnant and divorced. How do you manage to get these positions? It seems that you and your fellow pastors lie for each other. You cover for each other. Some churches even write recommendations for you to get rid of you and give you the opportunity to repeat all this in another gullible community. He stammered. Okay, I tried to seduce your wife, so what are you going to do now? You look like a weakling. You're not going to beat me up. You can't publicly accuse me without disgracing your wife. I didn't sleep with your wife. It's not that bad, is it? You're wrong, Rick. We've already established that you're a liar, so your words mean nothing. And we both know that people like you don't stop. What's more, I don't like your tone, Rick. You tell me you're trying to sleep with my wife and then you get angry at me. Damn it. You think God wants you to get your way, that he called you to this life, that you deserve little privileges like my wife. Well, he called me to protect her from snakes like you. And what are you going to do, Matt? Isn't it obvious, Rick? I'm going to kill you. With that, I reached for the coffee table again and pulled out my Sig P 226. I placed it on my right knee. Pastor Rick was clearly nervous. Edgar Allan Poe would have said he looked in a fit. Why? What for? For flirting with your wife? You're lecturing me about adultery when you're about to commit murder? Yes, Rick. I realize my hypocrisy. I've thought about it a lot. And I've decided that our sins are very different. You wanted my wife for selfish reasons, without thinking about what it would do to her, her husband, or her future family. You wanted to kill something pure. You're not pure, Pastor Rick, are you? This is insane. If you're trying to scare me into reforming, you've succeeded. I'll repent, I'll resign, I'll leave town. You don't kill people. You're an accountant, for God's sake. Ellie said you work for a government advertising agency. Pastor Rick, you didn't do your job. You always have to check people thoroughly. I don't work at an advertising agency. Then who are you? What do you do? I said I work for a government agency. I raised the gun and shot him in the left eye, just above the eyebrow. I took my secure cell phone, dialed the numbers I needed, and pressed send. 4 minutes later, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and let in 3 men in jumpsuits carrying a rolled-up carpet. 2 of them wrapped Pastor Rick in the blood-stained rug under his chair and carried him to their truck parked at the curb. The 3rd man spread a new rug on the floor. The first 2 carried the blood-stained chair to the truck, returned with a new chair of the same type, and placed it on the rug. Then all 3 began cleaning the blood splatters off the walls and floor. After 8 minutes of cleaning, the 3 left without saying a word. 2 got into the van and drove away, and the last one drove off in the pastor's Highlander. I took the folder and the gun back to the safe in my home office, then returned to the living room to wait for Ellie to wake up. I sprayed some Febreze air freshener and sat down in the armchair. I must have dozed off because I didn't wake up until 5 o'clock when Ellie slowly descended the stairs, holding on to the railing. I got up and went over to her, helping her sit down on the couch. "Are you okay, Ellie? You look terrible." "I don't know. I feel like I'm dying. Maybe it's the flu or some kind of virus. You know, I work with kids and they're always catching something. Damn, maybe I should get tested for COVID. Oh, where's Pastor Rick? Is he still here?" "No, honey, he left 3 hours ago. He said not to rush to work, just rest on the couch. Do you need anything? Should I make some soup?" "No, thanks. I'll try to get some sleep." She lay down on the couch and I covered her with my UA blanket. A month later, on a Wednesday evening, I walked into the kitchen after church. Ellie was sitting on a bar stool at the island, leafing through the latest issue of Southern Living magazine. "You're looking at the new member of the pastor search committee," I said. "Oh my God, how did you get yourself into this?" "I didn't get myself into it. I volunteered." "Why would you do that? You hate church politics." "Yes, I don't. But I hope we can avoid the mistakes of the past. That was a fiasco. The church still hasn't recovered." But who could have foreseen that? Poor unfortunate man. Just that day, at lunch, he confided in me and told me about some of his problems. "I'm sorry, dear, but I swore to keep it a secret. I know he's dead, but if I tell you now, it will further tarnish his memory and cause Christy untold pain." When she said that, her eyes filled with tears. "I know, Ellie. You couldn't have known that day that he was so close to the edge. You couldn't have known. So stop blaming yourself." "Do they know how he died, Matt?" "Yes. The coroner's report came out yesterday. You know, his body was found without his head. According to the report, his car was parked at the Gunnersville Dam, in the parking lot next to the lock. The report says he probably jumped off the dam and was immediately sucked into the turbines of the hydroelectric plant. There was water in his lungs, but not completely, so the coroner believes he was decapitated before he drowned." "Oh, how awful," she said quietly and slowly, covering her face with her hands and beginning to cry. "I have to call Christy and see how she is." She picked up the phone and went upstairs to call. Once again, I was struck by my wife's loving heart and generous spirit, and also by her innocence and vulnerability. The latter made me always be on my guard, but it was a small price to pay for the privilege of living with an angel.